The movie begins with an armored truck driving along an empty city street. The guards seem pretty relaxed as they pull up to a convenience store for a break. Two guards head inside, and after a while, two cars enter the parking lot, and as the guards exit, masked men wielding high-powered rifles hold the guards at gunpoint. The driver radios in the ambush, but one masked man holds his rifle to the windshield, warning that he has armor-piercing rounds and not afraid to use them. Another man uses a drill to pierce the windshield, attaching a grapple, which they use to pull the windshield right off the truck. One guard tries going for his gun, but the masked men shoot him and the other guards. While they prepare to blow open the back of the truck, their man on surveillance reports that the cops are on their way. The men set off a bleach bomb to wipe the evidence from their van. The cops pull up, but one robber rips the car to shreds, killing the responding officers. More officers pull up to the scene, and very soon an intense shootout begins. In the midst of the chaos, one robber gets shot and falls over. His friend tries to get to him but is pinned down by gunfire. The gangsters then concentrate their fire, killing a few officers and sending the others running for cover. The men then throw smoke bombs, and use the cover to escape with the armored van and one car. The surveillance guy directs them away from the cops, until they get back safely to their hideout on the edge of town. As the guys remove their gear, Ray Merriman, former Marine and their leader, chastises Bosco for opening fire on the guards, and not covering their fallen comrade Marcus, allowing him to get shot. He orders Bosco to head back over to the scene to identify the unit of cops that responded, worrying that the Major Crimes Division will be tracking them. After ensuring that the armored truck is clear of all tracking devices, Ray tells them to get started on cleaning the truck, declaring that they are cop killers now. We then meet LA detective Nick O'Brien as he pulls up to a home. He goes around back and tries using a key, however there is a latch on the door. He then tries the window and is able to break into the home and heads straight for the fridge to get a carton of milk. A woman slowly comes down the stairs to confront him, and it turns out to be his own home, and the woman, his wife Debbie. She catches him clearing his recent contacts and confronts him about his whereabouts, noting that he smells like a stripper. She shows him a text that he accidentally sent to her earlier that night, and he has nothing to say, but it's not what it looks like. A few minutes later, Debbie is already packed and ready, rushing the sleepy kids and not allowing them to say goodbye to Nick. She comes back to grab her bag, and he begs her not to leave and take the kids, but she ignores him. He stops her from entering the car, and she throws some wild fists at him before driving away. Later, Nick gets called to the scene of the robbery and shooting, where he meets up with his fellow group of rough major crimes detectives. The detectives go over the facts of the crime, noting that these robbers are experts, but the shocking thing is that the armored truck was empty. Nearby, Bosco is taking pictures of the detectives. The robbers spared the store owner, and Nick orders them to get all the video footage from the surveillance cameras and to locate the armored truck. Bosco brings the photos back to Ray, and they point out Nick as the leader of the task force. Ray pulls up Nick's photo, and Ensign remembers Nick from his football years. Ray then tells the men to get to know their enemy. Back at the station, Nick and his team try to figure out the leader of the team of robbers and why they would steal an empty truck. The team suspect and know of Ray's criminal background and that he was paroled a few months ago, so they decide to track him down by finding a member of his contacts, Donnie, who works at a bar. After finishing up a shift, Donnie comes face to face with Nick. Nick simply has a casual conversation to catch a feel for Donnie, then tells him, "See you later." As Donnie is getting into his car later, Nick reappears, tasing and knocking Donnie out. Donnie wakes up in a motel room and goes checking when he comes upon Nick and his team hanging out and drinking with a few girls around. They casually tell Donnie to take a seat and hang him liquor, but Donnie is insistent that they have the wrong man. Nick then shows him a picture of Donnie talking with Ray and lists out his criminal background, showing they know exactly who he is. The guys then send the girls out of the room and threaten Donnie with prison time. Donnie denies knowing Ray personally, and Nick gets serious. He warns Donnie not to mess with them, or he will be put into the ground. Nick grabs Donnie around the neck, almost choking him out, forcing him to agree to talk. Donnie confesses that he is just the driver for the team, but they leave him out of the details to avoid him ratting to the cops. He tells them how he met the guys at the bar, who turned out to be former Marines turned criminals. He tells them about the guys gathering at one of the Marines' home, his meeting of Ray and how he was impressed with his driving skills. Wanting more info, Nick tells Donnie to return to the crew and they'll keep in touch. On his way home, Donnie gets a call from Ray, giving him a time and location to meet up. Later, Nick is doing some shopping when he stumbles into Debbie and his daughters, and despite an urge to talk to him, she walks away before the kids see their dad. Ray and Bosco pick up Donnie and drive him to the spot for their next heist, the LA Federal Reserve. The three meet up with Ensign in a parking garage across from the reserve, noting that there have been 53 failed attempts at robbing the bank, but he is confident that they will succeed. At the station, Nick's team get the prints of the dead robber, a former Marine named Marcus who was stationed with Ray, and begin to round up the names of all the Marines who served time when Ray was in prison, noting how dangerous the team is. Meanwhile, Ray is briefing his team on the runnings of the Federal Reserve, the intense security procedures, and the fortune of $600 billion for them to loot from. He explains the procedure of discarding the old, unfit bills, and plans to target that massive sum once they are wiped from the system. Nick is leaving the meeting when he is approached by a lawyer and handed divorce papers, and his guys welcome him to the club. Donnie picks up a job as a delivery driver and passes through security checkpoints to deliver his food. He sneaks away to the bathroom after and hides a brown paper bag in the vents before leaving, the entire team unaware that Nick is also watching them. The next day, Ensign is at home, pissed that his daughter is about to go to prom with some guy who thinks he is slick. He tries to greet Ensign, but he calls the young man aside to have a chat. Inside the room, the guy comes face to face with Ray and the entire gang. Ray warns him not to mess up, or he will be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. The young man tries his best not to crap his pants before promising to return her on time. Later, Ray, Donnie, Ensign, and Bosco are having dinner when Nick and his guys walk in. Nick stops by the table, pretending to know Donnie from the gym and telling Ray that he knows him from somewhere, finally remembering that he used to kick Ray's ass at football. He starts to insult the men, and Ray stands to confront him, but Detective Gus comes, apologizing for Nick, and they leave. Later, Ray confronts Donnie, asking if he is actually a cop, but Donnie nervously denies this. They don't believe him, and Ensign asks him if he is wired, punching him when he still denies. Ray then holds a gun to Donnie, demanding that he tell them his connection with Nick. Donnie finally confesses that Nick approached him with info on the team, but he did not snitch. Ray accepts this, then tells Donnie to leak their heist to Nick. Later, Nick is driving by his friend's home when he sees his wife's car parked there. He enters the home to see their former friends along with Debbie and her new man. He stares everyone down, introducing himself, then taking a seat. He signs the divorce papers right there, before warning the new man to not so much as look at his daughters, or else. He further makes the guy uncomfortable by asking for a hug, claiming that it'll save them a lot of time in therapy. Before he leaves, he tells the man to look for a tattoo of his name on Debbie's bum when he gets the cheeks. The next day, Nick is getting himself a suit when Donnie confronts him about his stunt at the restaurant. Donnie tells Nick about a heist on a local bank on Friday, telling him to make sure he watches his back. Nick then stops by a shooting range where it turns out that Ray is also there. The two then begin to stare each other down, but Ray empties all his clips in quick succession before leaving with Bosco and Ensign. Nick then checks Ray's target, only to see everything on center mass. The next day, Nick is by a brothel when Ray enters. Nick's gun is on the counter, but Ray ignores it and walks past to get his cheeks. Nick heads back to his Jeep, giving his team the info he learnt from the woman, but this turns out to be a part of Ray's plan. The next day, Ray is packed and sets out. Nick stops by his daughter's school at recess and sees her playing. The two talk and she misses him, wanting to come home, but Ray avoids answering and sends her off back to class. Nick goes back to his car and breaks down crying over the situation. Nick gets to the station where he and his team gear up and set out to intercept Ray and his guys. Nick is sitting in the parking lot of the bank when he spots the van with Ray, Ensign, Bosco, and Donnie. The four enter the bank, ordering everyone down and shooting out the cameras. Once they get everyone in order, Nick then tells the hostages to cooperate and they will not be hurt, as they are only here for money. He tells them all to remove their cell phones from their bags and pockets, and takes them all before tying them up. Ray locates the bank manager and has him dial 911, ordering them to bring 10 million cash or one hostage will die every hour until then. Nick and his team hear the call to 911 and tries calling off the incoming cops, but the cars pull up with sirens blaring. A negotiator calls into the bank, trying to do small talk, but Ray tells him he just killed a hostage. Ray then has Bosco take a woman to the back room and 2 shots are heard. The negotiator calls back, asking for 9 minutes to meet their demands, and Ray agrees. Ray somehow has gotten Nick's number and calls him, asking if he is paying attention. Ray claims he isn't sure how he is getting out and says he isn't cuffing up, but Nick tells him he brought only his gun and no cuffs. Inside, Ensign sets charges and causes an explosion, and outside they think the men have blown the vault. Meanwhile, the surveillance guy Mac intercepts a call for a drop to the Federal Reserve. He then calls back pretending to be the business and setting up a drop for today. Outside the bank, Nick and his team get the plans for the bank and realize that there is a sewer line running beneath the bank which was sealed up. Nick then realizes the guy's plan, then grabs a crowbar from his truck and his gun. He manages to break inside but only sees the hostages. He checks the restroom where he sees the woman they supposedly shot. As the rest of Nick's team enter and clear the bank, they are shocked to see a massive hole in the floor of the bank. Ray and his team make it out of the sewers, and in a few minutes they pull up to the Federal Reserve in the armored truck they stole. Nick and his team are tracking the Marines through the sewer line, but he comes upon a closed hatch. Ray and Ensign are able to get access to the underground area and wheel in the cash they stole from the bank. As their deposit is being processed, Ray radios to Bosco to blow the power, causing the building to go into backup power. The security exits all the employees from the building as per security procedure, but it turns out that Donnie is hidden in the cash deposit box they brought in. He activates an EMP to blow the motion cameras to the room, before exiting and loading the cash into back and throwing them down the garbage chute. He manages to hide in the vents just before 2 employees re-enter the room. Donnie crawls to the restroom, where he pulls the bag he hid earlier from the vents and puts on a delivery uniform. He gets to the lobby to pass security, and the guard at the desk notices that he was not signed in, but lets him pass anyway. Meanwhile, the trash bags are collected by the garbage collector and dumped in his truck. As he is driving, he passes Bosco, who starts to follow him. He radios to Ray and Ensign, who quickly catch up with the garbage truck, intercept it, and drive away. Donnie has left the building and is making his way. But Nick and his team who are making their way to the building see him and grab him. They brutally punch Donnie, forcing him to give up Ray's location. Ray and Ensign collect the cash from the truck and are making their getaway, when Nick and his guys spot their van and begin to close in. They end up in traffic and Ray notices Nick's van behind them. Ray and his guys begin to gear up, preparing for the upcoming battle. Nick and his guys exit the van and the rest of his team pull up and begin to close in on the van. Ray then grabs a massive machine gun and mounts it on a nearby car, and then opens fire, hitting one of the sheriffs. An intense gunfight then erupts on the crowded streets, ripping cars to shreds. Ray, Ensign, and Bosco do a tactical retreat, covering each other, but Nick sends 2 of his guys to cut them off. Meanwhile, he and another sheriff push on the Marines. During the fight, Bosco gets shot and killed, but Ray manages to injure Nick's deputy, and they make a run for it. As they are moving, Nick's 2 guys intercept and manage to shoot Ensign, killing him. Ray unloads his rifle before dropping it and making a run for it, with Nick hot on his trail. Ray reveals a handgun and manages to shoot Nick in the hand, but Nick is persistent. He spots Ray about to jump over a fence, but lines him up perfectly and shoots through the fence, hitting him. Ray hides behind a van, but Nick manages to jump over the fence and the 2 shoot at each other until Ray runs out. He barely manages to reload his gun, then tries to push on Nick, but Nick shoots him once more, dropping him. Ray refuses to give up and reloads his gun, and Nick walks down on him. Ray stands to shoot and Nick begs him not to, but ends up shooting him and finally killing him. Nick returns to his van only to see Donnie gone. They check the bags for the supposed cash, but the bags are filled with shredded paper. The following day, Nick heads over to the bar where Donnie worked, but learned that he quit a few days ago. He is sitting around in the bar when he sees employees from the Federal Bank walk in. He then sees a picture of Donnie as a footballer, and on his team is also the driver for the garbage truck. Ray then realizes that Donnie was the mastermind all along. It turns out that Donnie was the one who masterminded the entire plot to rob the Federal Reserve, and had employed Ray to pull off the job. Over in London, we see Donnie working at a bar, with the truck driver and another female employee of the Federal Reserve having drinks. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you can watch more movies like this. Thanks for watching.